Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. So we start with appointment of substitutes, and I think we've got quite a few.
Yes, Chair. I'm microphoneless, so I will shout. In no particular order. Matt Bamley for Gemma Riaz, Elaine Gilmore for Robin Norfolk, Sue Smith for Richard Udall, and Katie Collier for Louise Dick.
Thank you very much. Right. Declarations of interest relevant to the agenda. Alex?
Just on the agenda item about the Scala, I work for a company that makes software for the hospitality industry, like food and beverage type people.
No, thank you for that. Public representations. I believe we do have a public speaker this evening. Did you want to come forward for the microphone? If you want to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for that. I'll be brief. My name is Bertie Ballinger, and I've just got some comments on the community engagement officers. So my comments tonight are, as I said, on the engagement officers, or the lack of them. Since the news broke a few weeks ago that redundancies within the council were being made, I requested more information on this, and I was informed that only one community engagement officer was being made redundant, which at the time was here, only one person was going. However, upon further investigation, I found that the whole team has been made, well, not redundant, but moved around, so there are no more community engagement officers at the City Council. Worcester prides itself on its community and volunteering spirit. It celebrates us volunteers every year. This year alone, volunteers saved the council just under £1 million in volunteer hours. Thanks in no small part to the community engagement officers. These officers have been instrumental in growing support and celebrating the numerous volunteer groups within the city, such as my friends of Lawnbrook Local Nature Reserve, who volunteer to make our nature reserve, local areas and waterways cleaner. We do this for free, we do this for the city, and all we ask is a bit of help from the council. The council's decision to remove this role is wrong. Its decision to remove this role is short-sighted, and we as residents have already heard that over the next year the City Council will put on less events due to this. While the team might have been small, it was mighty and its reach widespread, and I implore this committee to think hard about this decision, which has already been made, and hope that they have the sense to fix this before our city suffers. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for listening to my very short comments.
Thank you very much. You will receive a written reply. Thank you. Brings us on to the minutes of the last meeting, which was the 20th of May. I think we've had a couple of comments already. Did you want to kind of do those first, and then I'll go through page by page if there are any further comments?
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of minor points. On page 1 on the list of councillors present, Councillor Jagger is listed but had a substitute for that meeting, so she was not present. And page 3, about halfway down, on the 4th paragraph, it starts in addition. is a redundant is delegated in there, as in was to delegate responsibility for allocation is delegated to the Corporate Director of Planning and Governance. So we could just remove one of those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. So for others that may have read the minutes of the last meeting more recently, and I appreciate not everybody in the room here was at that, at that meeting. So page 1, looking for any other corrections or amendments. Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7 and page 8. Thank you. So I'll sign those, that amended version of the minutes. Thank you. We are going to do a bit of jiggling with the agenda due to kind of availability of officers to speak to different items. So we're going to go to 6 first, the key performance indicators. Yep, we're all on the in agreement. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report, members, is a report for noting. At the request of this committee, we've brought together an amalgamation of all of the performance indicators that are reported to the Council's policy committees, and there's over 100 of those. That's in Appendix 1. Those are an amalgamation of all of the current policy committees, and also Appendix 2 is those PIs that went to the Discontinued Health and Wellbeing Committee, and understand there's discussions with the Chair of and Vice Chair of Communities, and a report will come to November Committee about amalgamating, moving some of those health and wellbeing indicators into Communities Committee. So given the amount of data that's in the report and the fact that members in various fora will have seen these before, I'm not going to introduce the report any further. Obviously happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there is a lot there, and it is interesting to see the whole spread of council responsibilities and the performance indicator and the range indicators and the range of services that actually we are expected and that we do deliver on. So open for questions and comments. Pat?
Thank you. Yes, 106 money is legally spent on those areas most impacted by the development to which it relates. But I see that you've actually planned to remove £20,000 from Medway Road and spend it elsewhere. We're doing agenda item 6. Yes, hang on a minute. Oh, sorry, apologies. I am looking at 7. I've got them in the wrong order. Apologies. Yes, I'll say that later.
So, key performance indicators, we have questions or comments on those. We can see before us the whole range of indicators.
Thank you very much. Yeah, under the council tax collection rate item, many of us will have seen the item in the Worcester News a couple of weeks ago about millions of pounds of council tax unpaid in Worcester. And this led to a great deal of debate online about, as you can imagine, about council tax and council tax unpaid. So if I was going to speak to someone on the doorstep about council tax, what assurance can I have from officers that some effort is being made to claw back this money? Because you can understand where this is seen from a layman's perspective. They might sort of say, well, we're putting council tax up, which is adding to the burden of hard-pressed families. So surely, if we make more effort to collect the money that should be already being collected, surely that would ease things. I'm just interested what is the response from officers about chasing that unpaid council tax.
feeling it's in part of the Q4 report because we obviously noted the article in the Worcester News. So, outturn report.
It is one of our KPIs, but it would be better to have the more detailed conversation as part of the finance report. Thank you. Pat, you wanted to speak on the performance report?
Thank you, yes. I just wanted to commend the museum service. I mean, there's been a staggering increase in the footfall there. And, you know, it's a huge achievement and, you know, tremendously pleasing, I've got to say. Yeah, well, congratulations to them.
Thank you, Chair. On page 42, it talks about business rates. I can think of a business in my ward, which I won't name, that hasn't paid their business rates and had bailiffs around. They are a business that is an offshore business. I wonder what the City Council, what powers City Council has and will use to get that money back, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We follow the normal procedures for business rates. We do the normal debt recovery, the Revs and Bends service manage that, and then we'll go to the next stage, which is bailiffs, etc. That debt is to, if that business went into administration, otherwise we pursue the debt.
Okay. Adam?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to just highlight the couple of things around the city centre. First of all, the very satisfactory growth and in footfall in the city centre. The city centre continues to attract a good number of visitors and shoppers and tourists, and that should be welcomed. We are a city of great advantage for the residents, and people really enjoy coming here from outside. But on the other hand, satisfaction with levels of street cleanliness is poor and needs to be improved. My other comment would be about the recycling rates of domestic waste collection. I think we'll come on to that on one of the budgetary items, but that's been a significant factor in our performance indicators for a long time, and it's showing no sign of improvement. Something must be done.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. I mean, I found it really interesting. Sorry, Hannah, do you want to come?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention one more thing, which is on page 64, the property marking to deter theft or personal possessions. This was often done by the communities officers. I'm wondering now, without those community officers, how that work will be done. Karen and I have certainly done some in our ward with community officer support, and it's been very successful. So I'm just wondering how that could happen, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Just to confirm that we still have community safety officers in place. So the community safety function being a statutory function within the council, that aspect of community engagement is still continuing.
Thank you, Chair. I emailed an officer to request cycle marking at a school, and I was told the officer was leaving and there was no way for it to continue. Thank you.
Chair, we'll follow up with you individually outside. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm no longer on communities. There's one performance indicator I wanted to highlight that we should be really proud of, which is that we have a number of families who are in temporary accommodation for more than 6 weeks, or B&Bs for more than 6 weeks. I think it's been zero for a very long time, and long may that continue. And well done to the officers who've kept on top of that.
Thank you. Yeah. It is useful and interesting to see the whole kind of spread of the City Council's performance indicators on one page. I mean, I found my eye is initially drawn to the red ones, as the areas of concern, and household waste and recycling is a really important one, as Adam has highlighted. There are absolutely good things in it, and the green indicators around our planning service indicates that that is, a well-performing service to a high standard. Percentage of fly tipping cleared within time is a green indicator, which is a real achievement. It may be, that is different to perception, and it may be a question of who's fly tipping on which piece of land, but this is an indicator that our officers do deliver and are delivering services that make a real difference to the lives of our residents. Pleased to hear that the health and well-being indicators will be sort of shared out in future. I was trying to think whether there was any particularly, because those have not been looked at by the committee as yet. It does indicate, that as the council, we are very much part of the local integrated care system and delivering health initiatives within the city. A remarkable number of premises and events that are on the Access Able guide, and that we are an inclusive city and encouraging that in every way. The young people supported through mental health support, because I'm really pleased to see the final figures for the end of year with that, because it appeared to have a sort of slow takeoff, but is clearly reached significant numbers of young people to benefit them. So the formal recommendations are to note the Council's Q4 and annual performance for the key performance indicators included in all committee performance scorecards, with the death of Oflog as was set up by the previous government. There may be some of those indicators that we can quietly let go. There are new measures from the new government, outcome measures, which is open to consultation, but that are likely to look quite different to some of these. So, committee happy to note the recommendations. Thank you. So which agenda item do you want me to do next, people? Are we going to do, David, do you want to do yours? And then, yep. So agenda item 9, people. Town Investment Plan Communities Skills Project.
Thank you, Chair. This is very much a good news report for you tonight, members. Progress on delivery of our town investment plan projects across the whole set of projects. The report summarises the progress on these. They're all being overseen by their respective committees, and the report also recommends additional works on one of the projects which has an underspend, which I'll talk about in a moment, and ask you to delegate authority for those works to be carried out by officers. So, way back in 2021, we were awarded 19.6 million by the previous government for the Worcester Town Investment Plan, and at 2.2, that summarises the 5 projects, I beg your pardon, 5 projects, and where the allocations are for those. And members have been updated on the progress of all of these through the relevant committees, but just to summarise, the Heritage and Riverside project, the Cathedral Landscaping project is complete. I commend members to go and have a look at that if you haven't yet. A really good example of £140,000 of public money eventually leveraging in a project which will be the best part of £1 million really impressive and an addition to the city up at the top end of Cathedral Square. Our project at St Andrew's Gardens, both landscaping and also providing an accessible gradient all the way from the High Street now down to the riverside. That's been completed. There's some challenges about getting some of the grass to grow at the moment, as you can imagine, but I'm sure today's weather will have helped. And a nice piece there where the original spire has been relocated as a piece of public art and heritage visible from the road. The museum shop was refurbished some time ago. I'm sure members have seen that. And there's a temporary Worcestershire Soldier exhibition in place. That project's on track for the main exhibition to move out of the Museum and Art Gallery this September and to open again in the Commandery as an expanded exhibition in 2027. Works continue at Shrub Hill, so the public realm works are underway now to link up through Cromwell Street to link the station down to Asda and St Martin's. The second part of that project, Isaac Maddox House, we're currently in negotiations with our preferred contractor, Value Engineering at Reba Stage 4, so there's a little way to go on that project yet. The active travel project, we made huge progress on that. We've completed over 11.5 kilometres of new active travel routes, which are listed in the report. The Beryl scheme is now over a year old and operating successfully in the city. We are working to procure bike storage, secure bike storing for the arches and looking at further opportunities. A number of members will have been involved in discussions at Environment and PED committees where there's great interest in secure cycle parking in the city centre, and we continue to work on that, but members be aware there's significant challenges around that. And of course the Kippax Bridge that we contributed funding to has been open for some time now and is being well used. The Severn Centre Elizabeth Garrett Anderson House, the old Bearers House, is now the university's medical and health and wellbeing teaching centre, working really well and fully open, and quite a building. If you haven't been there, please go and have a look. It's quite a spectacular building, as well as being very educationally important for the city. So that brings us to the Community Skills Project. The building block 2 at Dines Green is completed and has been operating as planned very successfully. The part of the project was introducing digital facilities in the Community Trust community centres. That's also been completed. So a number of those centres have got new facilities for one-to-ones and digital training mostly in the reception areas. The St Peter's Village Hall that we're part funding, construction's now in progress. That's several metres off the ground now. There's a budget shortfall on that project that we will come to shortly. And the project that we're supporting the County Council at the Fairfield Centre to extend their hair and beauty training facility, that's in progress on site and on track to complete later this year. The time we did the specification for the building block 2, construction cost inflation post-pandemic and the war in Ukraine was incredibly high. Prices were doubling and trebling, and particularly steel. So we did a value engineering exercise and around procurement, and actually having done that, the costs have been lower than we had anticipated. So we built in a considerable contingency of around £200,000, which it hasn't been necessary to spend. So that's available for spend elsewhere. Now we've looked at some of the other projects. All of the projects are complete or will have completed during this financial year, with the exception of Shrub Hill. That's a £10 million project, and it's felt that adding any money to that wouldn't make a material difference to that project, given the scale concerned. So we're recommending a further capital investment in the assets supported through the Community Skill Project would be appropriate and would make a significant additional impact. And that would be entirely consistent with the original objectives of the project. In fact, some of those works were taken out at the value engineering stage, so they can be put back in. So the preferred option at section 3 is firstly to add an additional £30,000 to enable the St Peter's Village Hall to be built and to meet the budget there. That will allow completion of that project. And then at 3.3, we've been doing quite a bit of work with solar in conjunction with WCT. We've got solar at Dines Green Centre with a grant from Severn Trent water. We did omit solar panels from the Building Block 2 project, so we'd like to put those back in. And we've also been successful in being awarded a Salix grant for King George V, which will be a low carbon heating system, which will also include solar power. So what we're asking members to approve tonight is 30,000 towards St Peter's Village Hall, 25,000 for solar PV on Building Block 2, 130,000 across four of the centres there, Horizon, Ronkswood, the Green Centre and King George V, and around 15,000 for some minor works at Warndon and Tolley Centre, largely around soundproofing to give more privacy in the one-to-one consultation areas. Those are approximate prices. They will, of course, be subject to procurement when we go out to the market. So as I've said, alternative options to allocate that to other projects would require permission from the government, which would likely require further work on development of business cases, which would incur additional cost, actually. Would be significant in the context of the amount of money we've got available. What we're proposing doesn't require approval from government, and just in the implications, just to note that we've estimated the amount of carbon saving from the solar panels in this report. A broad approximation is around about 25 tonnes per annum, which would support our environmental sustainability strategy. So I hope that's clear. I'm obviously happy to take any questions, Chair. I'll commend you to recommend the proposals.
Thank you very much. It's a nice change to have a project coming in under budget and to have spare money to reallocate, and the proposal is kind of very much in line with the original principles. So any questions or comments? Alex?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm really glad to see the breadth of projects we've delivered through the Towns Fund, and really excited about seeing the extra solar panels being installed on our buildings, and thank you for the detail on the carbon we're going to save every year on it. I want to make a couple of brief points on two of the projects. So firstly, Shrub Hill. I think this is one of my hobby horses now, so I'd like to raise again that the Shrub Hill Quarter and Isaac Mellett House would make an excellent civic centre for the new unitary authority, embedding the council within our city, especially with County Hall no longer being operable and being on the edge of our city. I would love to see the new body embedded right in the centre of our city with access from the train station. I think that would make a really good place for that and bring it into our city. On active travel, I feel like I say this every time the towpaths come up, but the towpaths are not really great active travel infrastructure. They're not usable in the dark. There are many members of our society who don't like using them in the dark. And I had a particular experience this week that I wanted to share. I know Councillor Scott is indicating to me they're narrow, and this is about this issue. That on Monday, my wife, my 9-year-old son and I were cycling along the towpath on the way to start the bike bus, and we were sworn at and verbally abused by a resident on the towpath, because we'd had to stop because her dogs were loose on the towpath. Now, Highway Code Rule 56 is quite clear that dogs should be on leads on paths shared with cyclists. Now, there's no doubt that the improvement to 6 ways is welcome, but it really isn't the active travel infrastructure that we should be aspiring to in this city, because the narrowness of towpaths naturally leads to conflict between pedestrian and cyclists. So it'd be much better if we had dedicated spaces so that we didn't have those conflicts, because I understand why people don't have their dogs on leads on the towpath. It's a lovely place to walk, and the dogs should be able to go where they like. But just having cyclists and pedestrians in that same space leads to conflict and then leads to problems like this. So those are my comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is good that we have expanded the active travel network. We know there's a lot more that we might aspire to do, and it's not all perfect, but it is progress, which this money has enabled us to do. I'm not seeing any other hands up. I would, yeah, like. Yes, Adam. Oh, sorry, Adam.
I just want to commend the programme as a whole as an excellent example of combined regeneration projects in a very useful programme which has been drawn up for the city. But I particularly want to highlight the 2 city centre landscaping projects in the Cathedral grounds and St Andrews. Local residents around St Andrews have kept me fully informed of progress, and I hope I've passed on the messages to you at the appropriate time, but they're delighted with the way that the access is so much easier for elderly people, and they're very pleased with it, and good luck with keeping the grass growing.
Thank you. And it does illustrate what is a relatively small difference actually greatly increases accessibility. So yes, I want to thank officers and our partners. No, this is a very impressive record of achievement, actually, of delivering so many diverse projects within Worcester at the same time. So to the formal recommendations, note progress on delivering the projects within the town investment plan, approve the allocation of £200,000 of uncommitted funding within the town investment plan community skills project to deliver improvements to community centres in line with the original objectives of this project, and delegates authority to the Deputy Director Policy and Strategy and the Corporate Director Finance and Resources to agree the detailed specification and procure the agreed works. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Well done. So are we okay to go back to the beginning of the agenda? So that is item 5, the financial monitoring report. No damage done, no water spilt. Hooray. I don't know how we do with risk assessments, health and safety during committees. Yes. Welcome, Rachel, to the table. Tell us when you are ready to introduce the provisional outturn for the financial year that we've just completed and the financial monitoring report.
Thanks, Chair. So the report just summarises the financial outturn for revenue and capital expenditure for 24-25. So that financial year finished at the 31st of March. Just to note, we did actually get our statement of accounts produced and published on the internet in time, which is the deadline was the end of June. So that was much to the hard work of the finance team. What this report does is look at the management accounting side of things rather than the financial accounting, because that's another 100 pages and that will probably put a lot of people to sleep, to be honest. But this tries to give you some summary of the actual things that happen on the ground and what you have an impact on. It is a quite positive outturn. So in paragraph 2.1, it sets there that the budget for 24-25, and it does get confusing because we're halfway through 25-26 and looking to 26-27 budget setting. So, you know, we're in 3 different financial years. But that budget was set on the assumption that we were going to draw down reserves of £388,000. That we had a favourable position declared in Q3, which was done around March time, and things have improved by another £289,000 since then. So all in all, we actually we ended up putting back into reserve £71,000 rather than drawing down on that planned arrangement. In paragraph 2.4, there's a summary there of the main changes from when it was last reported. Some of those are one-off arrangements that sort of happen at year end when you start looking at overall debtors and creditors, and you can look at your write-offs and bad debt allowances. And that's certainly what helped on the housing benefits side of things. Business rates is a complex area of forecasting and accounting, and at year end that produced a favourable variance of £170,000 as well. There are a number of other items in there that all sort of contributed to that favourable variance, and what we'll be doing throughout the next few months is looking at whether those are things that we can bank and actually build into the budget for future years, or whether the adverse variance we need to build in some ongoing budget as well. So that's the work we'll be doing going forwards. There's additional detail in Appendix 1 showing variances like on salaries or on income overall. But you can see there in Table 1 how all of the services across the council have performed during the year, as was. Just a couple of things just to sort of flag up to you. In corporate, which is sort of 2/3 of the way down the table, there's a deficit there of £236,000. In the commentary, it talks about a vacancy factor. So in the corporate budget, there is a budget line that assumes that we'll be making a saving. So every time somebody leaves, it takes a few months to actually recruit somebody else. So there's a saving. So there's underspends right across the actual council services, but they're contrared by the overspend that's sort of held centrally there. And then there's an adverse variance of £134,000 on salary recharges. Again, that's another corporate budget where we try and utilise external grants wherever we can. Some of them allow us to charge our staff costs directly to those grants. Some of them are very complex and only let you charge external project managers to a capital grant. And this year we weren't able to achieve the £180,000 budget that is set, and that created a £134k adverse variance. Within city services, there is a deficit there of £227k. A significant amount of that is income related, and it's about making sure going forwards have we got the right income budgets aligned. So it could be that, you know, they are generating more income than what they've ever done before, but if it's out of sync with what the budget is doing, it creates this adverse variance. There's a couple of charts there just on some of those larger income service areas, and those are the ones that we sort of want to keep an eye on. Not so much they are underperforming, it's just that they're large budgets, and we just need to make sure that we're on top of them and we know what we're going to do in terms of setting next year's budget arrangements. Treasury management on paragraph 4 is something that we look at probably in more detail in audit committee, but it gives you a flavour there of some of the activity, and that is just about us managing our finance resources by making prudent investments and only borrowing when we need to borrow. Currently at the moment we're still in a sort of a cash rich because we've had a lot of external grants paid up front, so that allows us to make those investments or not defer the borrowing as needed. And then in paragraph 5, section 5 there, we've got a summary in terms of our reserves. So whilst we didn't draw down those reserves that we set the budget assuming we would, overall there was a number of earmarked sort of and a lot of our £11 million reserves are actually already allocated, and it's just the timing of when they'll be drawn down. So the table that you've got there just shows how reserves have reduced from last financial year to this financial year. But with the review of the reserves that is detailed or summarised, shall we say, in paragraph 5.4, we've tried to consolidate the reserves wherever possible and just reallocate them to those sort of risk areas to provide resilience for the future going forwards. There's a number of other sections, and on capital programme, again, that is significantly the external funding projects that we've got there. And then on section 7 is our collection fund, which is the collective term for council tax and business rates. The table 4 is Worcester City's outturn position. So the latest forecast was a deficit of 1.88 million. At year end, that is down to 1.4 million, and that doesn't come into the budget arrangements until we set 26-27. So that is a £485,000 favourable variance that we are starting to sort of build into the 25-26 forecast. So it doesn't mean to say that we will have a surplus, but it means that we're starting the financial year on a good stead with that. Collection fund is accounted differently to all other income. So, you know, that's why it's not in the actual sort of outturn numbers. That's just on paper at the moment and will be built into our forecast during 25-26. There's a bit of information there on our collection rates, which they are starting to increase, and our arrears, which were sort of increasing quite considerably each year end, have sort of stabilised and actually starting to come down now that the recovery work is actually sort of more active in the revenues team. And we've got figures there for Worcester as well. In section 8, there's just a performance information and then 2 referrals from Communities Committee and the Environment Committee. So that's all information that was on discussed in those committees, and just because of the budget arrangements and the limits on that, they're here tonight. So overall, a positive message. You know, it always seems to be that things get better as the financial year goes on. Yes, we need to be better with our forecasting, but with all the other changes that went on during that financial year, those variances aren't huge in the grand scheme of things, and I'd rather have a bit of prudency built in and have something that's more favourable when we've got a budget position like we've got, than having adverse variance. So overall, very pleasing. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's quite a lot of information in a short space there. So questions and comments? Jessie?
Thank you, Chair. Just had a question about the graph on page 13 about the planning income. Would you be able to explain a little bit more around what might be contributing to that line? So I can see in 2021, the planning income was much higher than it is, that was in 2023 and then 2025.
Yeah.
Page 13, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I'll sort of characterise it in terms of how a small change can make a big difference in a small planning authority. So obviously our boundaries are set slightly illogically in terms of where the city starts and ends, and some of the major development that's happened, which would attract larger planning fees, has happened outside of our city boundaries. So a year in which you see a larger planning fee will be because a major application or 1 or 2 have gone through the committee system. But you'll be aware that the vast majority of planning applications within our city boundaries are householder applications. So in a typical year, the fees are lower because the householder fee is set at a lower level. We've had these spikes in earlier years where that was higher. There's also a legacy issue that predates all of us at this table around a larger income fee being projected for planning than was actually deliverable. And we've addressed that by putting in a projection that's much more like the actual at the end of the year. So we're now in a position where the planning income is more realistic year by year. There will be very few major applications that come through, you know, full stop. And we have to just adjust and accommodate that lower planning income fee. And as you'll know, the planning income fees are constrained by government regulations in any event.
Thank you. And I think there is legislation, or there is going to be the potential for more being able to set planning fees locally that are actually related to cost.
Yes, but I think still we'll see a difference between how householders will be treated and major developers and applicants, and in an area where the majority of our applications are householders, that there's always going to be a limit on that.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of comments and a couple of questions. So on page 13 of the report pack, the graph with car parking and PCN income, it appears that we have ended up quite close to our budget, I think 55k or about 1.2% short, which I think is a very positive result considering the amount of flooding we've had over the winter and the amount of days lost of car parking revenue. And taken together with the, I think in the performance indicator reports, there was a mention about the number of empty units in the city centre being down to 28. And Councillor Scott's reference to the strong footfall in the city, I think taken all together, it shows that our long delayed raising of car parking costs is not having a detrimental economic effect on our city, which is good to see. I'm also glad to see on page 16.7.3 that total council tax and business rates arrears are now starting to fall, because I know I've asked questions in previous committees about the amounts you're writing off and what the pipeline of arrears look like. So it's good that they are now coming down, especially in the light of the reporting that Councillor Lamb referred to earlier. I think my two questions are, on page 11 of the report in table 1, governance services, it shows a 33,000 overspend on local elections. I'm not aware of any by-elections in 24-25, so I'm just wondering what the cause of the overspend there was. And on page 17.8.6, I know we're taking 60,000 from the play maintenance reserve. What remains in that reserve, and is it sufficient to maintain our play areas? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll respond to the question about elections. The overspend was all related to the all-out local elections in May 24. You know, this was the first time we've done it for a number of years. There are additional costs in relation to voter ID, which was partly mitigated by a grant we had held in reserves for election integrity. But there were also increased staffing costs and external printing and postage. As you know, postage costs rose quite significantly in 24-25. Play. Yeah, and also in regards to the play maintenance. So after allocating the 60k, we're left with 202,000, and that's all fully committed. We also have an annual revenue budget for 100k. We'll review the use of that going forward as part of the budget programme that we're taking on in autumn. So we'll review that as part of the budget setting, and we can assess it against other pressures within our limited funds.
So when you say it's all fully committed, is that on existing maintenance projects on our play equipment? But if there's any new maintenance issues that come up, we don't currently have funds to pay for those.
I think all of the play reserve is committed. The annual revenue budget will be used to meet any additional new maintenance requests.
Thanks. I think this is the question I was trying to ask earlier on. My apologies. Paragraph 8.4, £20,000 of 106 allocation relating to Medway Road has been supported by planners for use on the Purdiswell project. Now, 106 money legally has to be spent in the area most impacted by a development. Still can be spent more widely, and often is. But is that a typo, or is that accurate? Could you just tell me what's going on?
Yes, I believe there was a bit of confusion when the report was being written. I'm now told it should have been Mayfield Road. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there was an issue when the report was being prepared. I'm told it's Mayfield Road, Rainbow Hill Ward, and not Medway Road in Nunnery Ward. So apologies for that confusion.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight the surplus from EV charging in the city, which is, and note yesterday's announcements by our government to fully commit to the transition towards EV with additional funding for purchase and additional powers and abilities to provide on-street charging in areas where there is no off-street private spaces. And I think the transition to electric transport and hydrogen are entirely to be welcomed, and pleased to see the commitment by government playing full tilt at the moment.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check, Table 3, Capital Programme, it's got SMG solar panels. Is that the project that we're not doing? And does that mean that money is available, or has it gone back into a pot?
So that there is a reconciliation of where we started with the budget from quarter 3, from quarter 4. And if you recall, we had a detailed discussion about those solar panels in that intervening period. So we took them out of the capital programme and reduced the budget down.
Okay, so it just means that it hasn't been used for another suitable project?
Well, as it was being financed by, well, would have been financed by the revenue it would have generated. We've taken out the expenditure side and the funding side of it as well, because the funding's not there because the panels aren't generating.
Yeah, I know.
income. So,
I was just wondering, because I know that there were potential, that project had potential extra expense because of the the specifics of it.
Yep.
And I would have thought we could have found a cheaper project with a more favourable return. That's all on our land, even if it was, Purdyswell or somewhere else. I just think, we need solar panels, and you can see from the other projects, we're going to help community centres with the costs of their energy, which is really important. So I just think that's a bit of a shame. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's a budget reconciliation, isn't it? Wasn't money that we had as such. It was potentially to be borrowed against income. So in a sense, this is an accounting procedure rather than real money.
yes, I mean, essentially that's just bringing our budget down in terms of what we've got as approved schemes. If another scheme comes forward, it can be looked at for its viability. When I come to do the next budget report, there are pressures on the council's budget, and anything funded from borrowing is, increasing that deficit, but it needs to be considered in, against all of the other pressures going forwards.
Thank you. I mean, I think, the detail in table 1 of the differences, what's been achieved within different services, well done to officers for all the hard work and that. And it does kind of illustrate it depends on the original budgetary assumptions, and that's an art rather than a science, I think. So that the outturn is a positive one for the full financial year, and really grateful for that. But there is an element of kind of swings and roundabouts to achieve that. We've referenced I will go through the recommendations. So the referrals from Communities Committee to move 70k towards the Play Strategy Programme, and that's specifically around delivering the pump track at Purdyswell. The referral from Environment Committee to use some of the extended producer responsibility grant that we have to recruit our own waste and recycling education and communications officer. I mean, I'm really pleased to support that. As we saw in the performance indicators, we really need to improve recycling. I don't know whether the county council was supposed to be doing some of this work, but the reality is that, if you move around the country, if you're mobile, every local authority, every council has its own different colour bins and its own kind of rules as to what goes in which. So a local education to help our residents do their best is absolutely important and really valuable and can be tailored to the needs of our communities. And I know that our waste collection service know which are the areas that struggle to get it right, so we can absolutely focus on that need. So the formal recommendations note the financial monitoring details, including budget variances and performance indicators for the fourth quarter ended the 31st of March 2025. Note the write-offs of council tax and business rates for the quarter ended 31st of March. Agree the balances on earmarked reserves at 31st of March. Agree referral from Communities Committee regarding £70,000 allocation from reserves towards the Play Strategy Programme, and agree the referral from Environment Committee regarding funding the Waste and Recycling Communications and Engagement Officer, Education Officer. I'm going to struggle to get the right job title, aren't I? All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. That's unanimous. So I think next agenda item 7, which is medium-term financial plan update. So having put last financial year to bed, we are now looking forwards.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So this is just an update on the medium-term financial plan, the MTFP. So now we've just done the end of the financial year. It just gives us an opportunity to take stock of where we are and the changes that either have been agreed or are being muted over the last few months since we last looked at the budget when Council voted in March. So what you will see there in the paragraph, just the table under paragraph 2.3 is the summary of the financial sustainability plan. So when Council met in March, there was a line of £970,000, and that was made up of £450,000 as a one-off transfer by utilising the UK SBF grant. And then officers came up with a sort of a recurrent savings items. We had a target of £780,000 at that time. You'll see from the last column in that table, we've actually achieved an ongoing saving of £778,000. But due to the timing of when those staff left, or when the vacancy was removed, or whatever the saving was, you know, people didn't just leave on the 1st of April. It's been a staggered process during the few months of this financial year. So we've actually achieved £646,000 there by removing posts and increasing income. And when you take that on top of the 450k switch on UK SBF, then on the face of things, and all of the things being equal, we should hopefully have £126,000 underspend when we do the first quarter forecasting on that. And that gives you the sort of the size of the savings that were delivered from each of the directorates. Just to note that it cost around £300,000 for all of the sort of termination payments, whether it be redundancies or costs of pension that we had to pay to the pension fund. So within the medium-term financial plan, there are a significant amount of assumptions that go into that. And at this point in time, a lot of them are still unclear as to whether we've got them right, whether we've been too prudent or not prudent enough. And in paragraph 2.6, there's a couple of examples there. So we set the budget assuming that every pay scale would actually get a one-off, a payment of £1,950. So if you're at the bottom of the scale, that might equate to 6, 7, 8% increase. If you're at the top of the scale, I think it would probably be capped at around 2% or 2.3 last time. The employer's latest offer is 3.2%. Now, that has been rejected by unions at the moment, so we don't know what the final bill will be and what will be agreed. But just to give you an example, if that 3.2% was implemented, and it would be backdated to the 1st of April, then that would produce something like a £70,000–80,000 saving on the medium-term financial plan, and that would be recurrent for all years. Having said that, bit of potential good news. When you look at the pension fund, our pension rates that the council has to pay into the pension fund on behalf of its employees are set every 3 years. The first year of the new triennial process kicks in from April 2026. When the budget was set, it was assumed that we would only be paying 19% going forwards, which is at the current rate, and it doesn't include anything for backdated deficits. The pension fund is in a healthier position to what it has been for a number of years, but at the moment the latest intel from the pension fund is that whilst our pension rates will reduce from 25-26, we don't think that they will go down to that 19% rate. So that would probably cause a £50,000 or £60,000 pressure on a recurrent basis. Having said all that, of 50,000 or 70,000 and whatever it may be, at least I've got something real and tangible to work with on those assumptions. But when it comes to paragraph 2.7, there was a 126-page consultation document released a few weeks ago on Fair Funding 2.0. Now, fair funding is something that's been talked about for many years now. And, you know, I think it's welcomed in the sector because there's lots of outdated statistics that are used, like the old census from 2011. The world's moved on from there now. But with the scope of the changes that are being floated and consulted on, it does create a lot of uncertainty in the sector at the moment. So what it means is that the needs assessment of each local authority is all being updated with a lot of different formula factors, and things are being consolidated and there are fewer factors. But also on the funding side of things, there's a business rates reset. So growth that was in the system that some councils were benefiting from for the last since 2014, that's being taken off councils and then thrown back into the big pot. So we've got uncertainty on both sides of the equation. We are currently attending multiple seminars, trying to get our heads around all of the changes and engaging with experts that we can try and get an assessment of what that might mean for Worcester City. We have been told that there will be a policy document that will be released in the autumn, and if last year's policy document's anything to go by, it was quite informative. It was quite useful there to actually inform assumptions going forward, and everybody recognises that getting the provisional local government finance settlement on a couple of days before everybody breaks up for Christmas isn't ideal. So they are trying to give us our numbers at the end of November. It'll probably be early December, but even that will be better than sort of Christmas week. And that's when, you know, we start to get some real numbers for the impacts on our budgets. But one of the main purposes of this medium-term financial plan is just to get the process agreed for setting the 26-27 budget. And as you can see there in paragraph 3, the proposal is to go with the normal budget setting process here at Worcester, with P&R taking the lead, but a draft budget's going through all of the different committees, and there's a schedule of the different dates there that the committees are meeting, with the intention of having scrutiny in the January round, and then February we have Policy and Resources Committee with making a recommendation to full council on the 24th of February, and hopefully that is after the fire and everybody else has set their budget, so that we only have one council meeting this time. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Alex?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm definitely going to be happy to note this report and the schedule for creating the budget for next year, but I want to be clear at this stage what it will take to get the Green Group to support the budget when we get to February next year, because I like to operate on the principle of no surprises, so I want to make these things clear nice and early. So as the report is very clear, we have a budget gap to close in 26-27 and 27-28 that amount to 8% and 16% of our expenditure in those years. And I don't think any of us should read this report and all the uncertainty that Rachel referred to and conclude that money is going to be showered on this council to close those gaps. So we're going to have to go through a transformation. We're going to have to make cuts to balance the budget. And we stand ready to work work together and make that happen and discuss how we do it. I think my challenge to officers and members here is this: make it difficult for us to vote against the budget. So for me, that means we need to have a good understanding of what we are cutting and what we are transforming ahead of the budget next year. So I don't want to get to February again with a single line in the budget labelled Financial Sustainability Plan that balances the shortfall out and no additional detail. Now this can be discussed between group leaders in private if needed, but we need to have the opportunity to debate and discuss how we're going to close the gap, so that when it comes to the budget votes in February, we are assured that the choices we as a council are going to make are, to the best of our ability, the ones that minimise the pain caused to our residents and staff and maintain our services to the highest level that we can. If we don't have that assurance, then we won't be able to support the budget. Like I said, I would reiterate, I want it to be as difficult as possible to vote against the budget by having those assurances and having agreed these are the right cuts to be made, these are the right transformations to be made. If we don't have those discussions and we end up in the same situation again, then the result will be the same. So please let's work together to make sure that we close these gaps in the right way.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? It clearly is at a very early stage in terms of knowing what funding we are going to have going forwards. I would hope that we're all committed to delivering the best for Worcester City and maintaining the services that matter to our residents as best we can. I've just kind of got a question, and I probably should know the answer. So, I mean, we have regulatory committees. They don't have budget setting powers, but they do spend money, if you see what I mean. So are the other kind of service budgets, the impact of those, will those come to P&R?
Through you, Chair, yes, because all the functions of the regulatory committees are described as the services which feature in the full budget. So, yes, there's not policy discretion where they're making investments in new initiatives. So, yes, they're just service budgets.
Thank you very much. So in terms of, the process and the timetable is there's a number of meetings there. There will be conversations in between as information becomes available from central government and our local position as well. So committee recommendations are that we note the update on the financial sustainability plan and note the update on the medium-term financial plan and agree the budget timetable as set out in paragraph 3.2. So all those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8, Scala.
Thank you, Chair. This report is called Scala Development of Additional Assets. The purpose of the report is to seek the committee's approval to commit expenditure and let works contracts using the government's recently confirmed cultural funding allocation of 2.328 million to Worcester in order to deliver 3 schemes which will support the successful operation of Scala Art Centre. Those 3 schemes are the Corn Exchange, number 6 co-working space, and additional infrastructure works to Angel Place. So there's a background section to the report, and the committee will recall that the last time we were together considering this project was to give approval to let the main works contract, and we considered that both in September and then in December. Considering the funding that was available to the council from Future High Streets Fund, the main works contract was let in respect of Scala only, and that contract mobilised and Speller Metcalfe were on site by February. And the report also reflects that over that timescale last year, in March, the council was invited to bid for some what was then called levelling up funding, specifically for cultural projects. We bid for a series of different projects, and then there was a pause, change in national administration and a pause whilst we waited to learn the outcome of that levelling up bid. So several things have happened concurrently, and what we're able to do today is to move forward with the allocation of the funding that formerly known as levelling up, now cultural funding. It took a little while for the new administration to confirm the terms of the cultural funding. It is very much based on the original business case we submitted. You'll recall that not all of our bids were submitted, but the three that support Scala were, so the ones I've already identified. And we needed to do a process of change control and negotiation with the government to reflect the fact that due to, again, the funding envelope available, we couldn't deliver the mezzanine scheme in the Corn Exchange, but we required the funding to deliver what we call the ground floor works, so the fit out of the Corn Exchange, including external improvements, a full internal fit out in terms of a food and beverage operation, and a lot of works that will be invisible to visitors in terms of the mechanical and electrical infrastructure. So if we hadn't received that funding, we would seriously obviously have a challenge in terms of delivery of Corn Exchange, and we know that that would be really critical to the viability of Scala's business plan. Just in relation to Scala's business plan, again, in the background section, we record that last July, the committee endorsed a specific business plan, which came to this committee and was scrutinised at length. On the strength of that business plan, leadership has been established at Scala. A new charitable organisation has been submitted to the Charity Commission for Incorporation. I've put, it's very much built from and faithful to the business plan that the council has approved and forms the basis of the council's investment. I've put the charitable object in there in case anybody wants to read that, and you can see that it's obviously still very much aiming to deliver a multitude of different outcomes for the city, not just economic development and regeneration, but social outcomes, skills, learning, arts and culture, all sorts of things that are key to this council's strategic plan and whoever succeeds us, hopefully. In relation to the specific investments that we're asking you to make tonight, how that money is broken down is this is the allocation that's come from government. Corn Exchange is 1.725 million. Scala Co-working is 370,000. Angel Place is Your Space, which is my title for the sort of youth play provision, is 233,000. And again, I suppose just to cut to the chase, what this report is saying is that that is the absolute financial envelope that we will work within to deliver those schemes. So this report does not ask for a call on the council's funding in respect to those developments. And again, I suppose I just want to go straight to the risk, which is that, particularly as regards the Corn Exchange element, it will be tight staying within that funding envelope. But it's our commitment to do that, and obviously we will report back through major programmes member reference group as we do regularly should that become challenging, and we will look at how to make sure that we can deliver that within budget. In terms of other aspects, I just want to cover off briefly. We've put an update on the construction timetable and the progress of the works in there. Again, just to give you assurance that with a contractor mobilised, it's now quite easy to add these additional works package into the overall timetable, and hopefully and very much expected to still achieve a practical completion on all aspects of the development across that area by autumn next year. We've got October and November as specific dates there. And of course, you'll be well aware of the physical progress that's being made at Scala, because it's clearly very obvious at the moment. Again, I think it's just worth saying that in relation to the commitment to make this next investment, again, Scala leadership council project team, we were very keen to just demonstrate that there's an awful lot of thought going into this behind the scenes, an awful lot of expertise now. We had previously embarked, when we were just the council on this project, we had previously embarked on a procurement process for an external food and beverage operator. The proposal now is to bring that to an end. It's largely lapsed in any event. We were at a much less advanced stage of the project, and now where the model has got to on food and beverage, which we do explain briefly in the report, is that it would be considered inadvisable to externalise things like the wet sales, the drink sales. Much better to keep that in-house, much better to grow a model of in-house catering provision working with some external suppliers instead of a kind of a single franchisee, which again the Scala leadership considers would be high risk in terms of reputation, branding and control, and provide a low financial return. There is a background paper, it's not a published paper, there's a background paper that I've circulated to the committee which you may wish to read at your level that has the support of Scala leadership and trustees. And as I say, they've been speaking to about 10 different catering operators and food and beverage suppliers over the last few months. So the detailed information in that paper is very much triangulated from all those different sources. And there is a strong sense that if you can take your time to grow the in-house model, then your financial returns are very much worth waiting for. So that's where that's at. And that obviously it's not really for us tonight to scrutinise that, bearing in mind the sort of start to be the shift in responsibility to the delivery and the risk that sits with Scala Charity. But just to recognise that as we go forward now and fit out these spaces, just to provide assurance that that level of thinking is going in to the process as we let these next works contracts. So again, just to summarise really, tonight is about these three main works contracts. We have the Corn Exchange works, as I've just illustrated. What that will involve largely is a kitchen fit out, mechanical and electrical and new flooring and things like that, and work to the external facade of the building. The co-working space is considered to be inherently really valuable to Scala, both in terms of back office and co-location for other creative industries, and provide some income source to Scala. And Angel Place outdoor infrastructure, the money that we have through the cultural funding needs to be used to develop social space. We also have an allocation of funding, a small amount of allocation through Future High Streets funding. The two elements come together. And we need to use that other element of funding to make sure that we have hostile vehicle mitigation measures, lighting, power, seating, all those other important factors. And I think I just want to draw that point out because there will be something interesting to talk about with members and the community on the design of Angel Place, but I just want to manage expectations that that will come a little later, because all the kind of boring stuff has got to come first about the cost of the hostile vehicle mitigation, which, as you probably know, is more and more of a pressing issue. And there is work being done at the moment to actually scope the lighting and power solutions and staging options and things like that. So there will be something very much coming back, and we're acutely aware that Angel Place has a number of stakeholders, not least local traders in the market and the new operators of Crown Gate. So I'm not asking tonight for a kind of complete sign-off on what is the final design. It's more we need to let the works contract and get into that process, really. The other two aspects I wouldn't expect to come back to committee unless there is an overspend risk, and clearly we won't go ahead on that basis without coming back to you, because, as I say, we're committed to doing this within the funding envelope from government. Some of the funding will go on professional fees, and that's set out in section 5. Chair, I'm going to pause at that point and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The paper overall gives I think a really helpful update of the steps on the journey of Scala since we last had a report or a decision to committee. Got Adam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sian, for the very full update and on a most exciting project which I've come across for many, many years, and absolutely delighted to be the ward councillor in which this is taking place. And I think we should all be proud to be councillors in a city with such an exciting project going on. And underpinning it all, as you say, is the business plan, which I reread in the run-up to this in this committee, and I'd say it's incredibly strong business plan, very well argued, very inclusive, and amazingly good for a first configuration of something which is going to emerge as it goes on. I can see why government were able to, as they changed, to look at our project and well, there's a bit of hesitation, but to reconfirm funding and add to it with the capital funding. And it's really, I'm sure that the new charity and its board are picking this up with on a really sound footing as a development, because it is a development which will take place. It's such a complicated project. It's multi-stranded. As Sian said, it's got many objectives which it's aiming to deliver. And its job now is to properly get grounded in the partnerships which is emerging in the community of residents, organisations, and I think businesses. We read a little bit about the catering provision which will be made in Corn Market, and just looking a bit more detail at the papers, I'm convinced in a city which has a growing number of restaurants and bars, I can see quite easily how the Corn Market offer, as it's being configured, and is a chance to bring real new experience to the city, which does tend to be, you know, the full independence and allowed for a bit more variety than sometimes what we see. Really delighted by that development. So we look forward to further progress on it, and I hope that all the organisations with an interest in arts will find opportunities to be supported by this one. It's not a thing to replace anything, it's to add to and support what's already developing the city, and a real good flagship to it. And the last thing about the business plan, I'm sure it will be a really good vehicle for making further bids for grants and maybe sponsorship in the future. So that's on the business plan. I'll delay comments on Angel Place, but suffice it to say that is just a hugely important public space in the city. It's outside Scala, but it's also going to be really important to people who might never will just be walking past or taking their time to mingle in a really important public space. So I'm pleased to hear that Care is going to be taken over the brief and how it's developed. I'd, as usual, put a plea in for making sure that there's adequate shade, particularly tree cover, in an area in the city in this growing times of high urban temperatures. It's really important that we fulfil that role. Angel Place has, over the years I've known it, from a grotty old bus station and onwards, it's had different configurations, and I'm not sure it's worked properly for yet. And so this is a chance to get it right, and let's make sure the community of Worcester have a say and are proud of the space, as they will be, of the new art centre. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and yeah, appreciate your professional eye and your experience being kind of cast over this project. I've got Hannah next.
Thank you, Chair. My questions might be a bit too granular for now, so apologies if that is the case. I wondered two things: if the kitchen would be gas or if it would be electric. And as someone who was in a theatre this weekend, full of audience members with fans and really struggling in the heat, someone who was in the theatre this weekend and lots of audience members really struggling with the heat, I was wondering what climate mitigations the building would have in terms of urban heating and you know, the temperatures that are likely to be the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So firstly, in relation to gas or electric, it's a very much a live discussion, excuse the pun. We have the benefit of caterers working in adjacent and venues in other cities. there's a strong argument for just going electric, both in terms of I'll start with sustainability, but also just how that might really work well in that particular space. What I would say is there's a legacy gas connection, so we're not necessarily closing off that possibility, but as we go into REBA 3, the conversations we've been having this week is potentially electric only. That's been the discussion this week. And then on your second point, again, absolutely, that is a very current issue. And again, we've heard from another operator about how they're having to retrofit additional solutions. What I think the best thing for me to do is to undertake to provide a written answer as to what are the levels that are being worked to. I suppose what I would say, I go back to the fact that we're working with a really expert team of architects in terms of auditorium fit out and so forth. And they've got the opportunity to spec up for us what they think is now appropriate, as opposed to some of the venues that we're talking to that you're no doubt familiar with, who are dealing with systems that are 10 years, 20 years old. So I would hope that it's going to serve us well, but I will get an answer and circulate that. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. I support everything in the main, but I do have concerns about the catering offer and the 1.5 recommendation. It's not too long ago now that Kind Folk opened at Gallivant Park, and prior to that, remember we tendered it, and we purposely didn't choose a charity. We chose a commercial operator, and they've been so successful. They've been even more successful than they thought they would be. And also, I think, obviously, I've been Vice Chair of Licensing, and I've sat on Worcestershire Regulatory Services Board, and I've seen the high volume of cafes that open and also close in the city. I mean, it is a particularly competitive market here, and I think it's a very different skill set, the arts to hospitality, so that does concern me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a very fair question, very fair challenge. I suppose what I would say is that the benchmarking shows that most venues have an in-house catering operation. They do that through a trading arm, and they do that through professionally trained staff. So it isn't the arts charity staff who are running the catering, it's a trading subsidiary. The other point to say is that, yes, absolutely, it could be the case that you tender the opportunity and the whole space, and you get a great partner and you get a great fit. The background paper I've circulated suggested that at the time we did that a year ago, or over a year ago, the conditions weren't right. What we know about the Corn Exchange is it will be a really valuable space to monetize in a number of different ways. You can fit 175 people in standing, you can have events and experiences in there. What we do know from the tender process we did, another soft market engagement, is that if we just offered the opportunity as a wholesale franchise to a catering operator, they will need control of the space at all times with their staff and their operation and their brand, which would, if you like, deprive the arts centre of the space for other purposes. And so the ability to monetize that space will just end up sitting wholly in an arm's length, a different catering provider. And I guess my final point is that it would never be too late to tender it if the feasibility took us in a different direction. And, you know, an arts centre in most towns has been there for decades. So in the life of an arts centre, various models might be tried in and out. So I would want you to think that any decision we make tonight isn't going to preclude us from the charity making a different decision in the future. But as things stand at the moment, all the advice around the table says, let's try and make an in-house model work. And the paper also says that doesn't preclude us from working with external chefs, local suppliers, celebrating the best of local suppliers, but actually a mixed model of delivery, guest chefs, individual events, pop-ups, as opposed to kind of, again, excuse the pun, all our eggs in one basket before we even open the doors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. And I think having the flexibility to change in the future, not being set in stone, that does provide reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I might start by apologising because when I first looked at this paper, I hadn't had a chance to go through it, and I meant to give some feedback earlier on, but it's taken me a long time to summarise my thoughts on this. Some of it refers to the information on the pink paper, so I wonder whether it might be appropriate to make those comments in closed session rather than in the public session, because there might be some commercially sensitive information.
I mean,
It's not a published paper, it's just a background paper really, because it's obviously just sort of for information. Yes, I don't really know how to manage that. If you think it's going to be essential to the way you'd want to take the item forward, we may have to have an adjournment, but I just shared it for information really, because it's sort of come and gone really as an opportunity, and it didn't yield the results we wanted. So I really shared it just for information.
will it affect your ability to vote on the recommendations?
Possibly.
Yes, it's a closed session, but it's an unpublished paper, so I guess I'll just have to provide a verbal summary. I suppose I should just say then for the notes, then what it is in the background paper is a summary of the catering bids that were received when we did the tender process last year. Could we continue the discussion and then take a pause at the end of the discussion around the table? Is that okay?
Thank you. I've got Elaine next.
Thank you, Chair. It's just with regard paragraph 2.14 around the sort of historical artefacts that have been discovered, which I'm sure are really exciting. And we were discussing beforehand, Adam has some memories of seeing The Sound of Music at the Scala, and lots of people that I've spoken to really enjoy reminiscing about their time with Scala. And it sort of reflects our kind of emerging city motto in a way, isn't it? That we're a historic city, but we're future focused. And I think we've got a generation of people who remember it and loved it as the Scala Theatre, and a new generation, particularly my son's age, who are really excited about what the Scala will become to them and their generation. So I just want to make sure that steps have been taken to preserve these, and whether they're going to be used to sort of pay homage to what the Scala was in the time of what the Scala has now become.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I mean, they're in the safe hands of Sheena and Philippa in terms of Worcester Life Stories and Museums here. There is some Life Stories work planned in relation to I Remember the Scala Because sort of things. There are also some amazing stories coming out of the woodwork, including from our contractor Spella Metcalfe and some people associated with their workforce. As part of the sort of opening programme as well, and the separate funding we've received for Place Partnership from the Arts Council, I will be celebrating Worcester Now, and very much this point about some of the cultural legacy we have. So yes, those artefacts and those life stories will definitely reappear.
I've got Pat next.
Thank you. Yes, it was fascinating that there was ephemera connected with the development as well. That's marvellous. What I really wanted to talk about was, is there a proper communications plan to increase publicity towards launch? Because we'll need more. I mean, there are a lot of people in Worcester that don't seem to know much about La Scala at the moment. And it'd be really nice to feel that young people in particular who might use this building in the future would be better informed and would know much more about what was possible in it.
Yes, there is a communications plan currently. There's information going out through a number of channels, as you may be aware. You're quite right, you do still encounter people who should know what Scala is and somehow don't. And as you say, very much closer to opening, there will be a lot more campaign activity. And also, again, as I said, we have the Place Partnership funding through the Arts Council. Scala will deliver a festival circa April or May next year with the Scala brand, and we'll be able to do much more around coming soon. And this is all part of a wider audience development plan. So, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting to see the timetable and the very real progress on something that we've been talking about over a number of years. And it does illustrate how long it takes to deliver such a major transformational project as this. I mean, with regard to communications, I would commend everybody to go to Scala website or their social media. There's a fabulous video on there at the moment which shows the inside of the Scala and the scaffolding inside, accompanied by a poem from one of our trustees, which is just, yeah, absolutely brilliant. Grateful to the government and I think we should say thank you to our MP who was lobbying pretty hard for us to be able to get it. So we have a number of recommendations. Yeah. Do we want to pause before we take them? Those in favour, is it worth taking a vote on the pause? Do we feel we need to go into closed session? Those.
If you could make them in the generality, I think that would be fine, won't it? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I will do that. I think that I like the offer. I appreciate all the work that has been done and all the comments that have been taken into consideration. I have a couple of reservations. I think that's probably the best word to describe them, of my worries about the experience of the Scala. It's not just your average community center, that it has, I dare use the word luxurious experience, perhaps that word is perhaps controversial, but we could have that experience without being exclusive. And to me, what's really important is that the venue would be something that would draw somebody from Oxford or from London to come and visit us for the evening. And I'm not sure I can see that yet. And perhaps that will come. I'm not seeing sleep through the page yet. Part of that is the food offering. One of my biggest worry is that the food offering during the daytime, the 9 to 5 offer, might lack in ambition. And so if we look at places like the Pump House before it became a commercial operator, it was a very basic offering, which wouldn't draw necessarily the sort of working professional crowd that might make it financially viable. And so I worry that that might be the case. I do realize that there's a post 5 o'clock offering, which is a bit more ambitious, a bit more adventurous. And now my worry there is that it might swing the other way. I mean, it might take something that is too cultural, too ambitious, it might not work, and then eventually will become a venue that operates from 9 to 5, doesn't quite struggle, and ends up operating 9 till 3 Monday to Thursday, so nobody who's actually employed can actually use it. That's my worry. And that even it will become just a daytime thing for, you know, people who don't need to work, retired, or who don't have a 9 to 5 job. And so if we can do some work around that, to just ease my worries on those specific points, I think I would be more comfortable supporting it.
Through you, Chair. Yes, again, I think they're all very fair challenges. Starting with the evening offer first, what I would say is that, again, a number of independent people who run other venues successfully, they walk in and they're impressed with the physical space in the context of what's currently available in Worcester and that city centre location. And to monetize that space involves doing different creative, interesting things in the evening, experiences, of which food is a part, so food and live music, or food and some other form of performance. And the Corn Exchange offers that opportunity that isn't otherwise available in the city at the moment. You're absolutely right that the quality of the food then needs to be spot on, and people are very quick to take to social media if they're not impressed. There's also the point about price points, and last year, I mean, it's a full 12 months ago, we did the business plan here, isn't it? But there was a lot of talk about price points. And again, I don't want to name other venues, but there are other venues who've given a lot of thought to whether chips is £3.50 or £5 and who it deters and who it attracts. There's a lot of thought around that. And on those matters, we've got to be very conscious. Again, I don't want to name names, but we've got to be very conscious of a large food and drink operator who's just behind our building, and lots of other food operators, late night food operators who are just along the row. And those factors will drive the food offer and the catering decision, the price points largely. It's very context specific. It definitely will be a daytime offer to the evening offer. The evening offer is where it's capable of scaling up and being more, as I say, financially viable, and the price points being higher. In the daytime, it's expected now, as I say in the report, looking at the programming of all the spaces across the two buildings, it's expecting that the Corn Exchange will do other things during the day as well at points, which would again lend support to the argument that you should try and keep the food offer in-house and quite modest in the daytime, and only try and be ambitious in the evenings and do events and so forth. So yeah, there's risks in any model, but at the moment it's considered that it's lower risk to try and flex it and adapt it than it is to outsource it all and effectively hand over the keys at this stage.
Thank you. And it is a delicate balance. It's a balance between, you know, being an inclusive venue that is open to the community, offering something really special, and there are people in the city that have different aspirations for the building. It may not be able at the end of the day to please every possible audience, but you know, I had the benefit of going to a meeting with the charity and meeting the new trustees a couple of months ago, I think, and there is, you know, a lot of expertise on that charity now, and people who have experience of not only of the creative side, but of running venues sustainably over a prolonged period, which is, you know, a tricky thing to pull off through the kind of years of austerity that we've lived through. I absolutely take comfort, you know, the objectives of the charitable organisation and, you know, their values and aspiration are absolutely ones that bring something really special to Worcester, and I hope that, you know, that we can support that and deliver it in the time frame that we've got. Do you want me to take all of the recommendations in one go for a vote, or do you want me to split them down? All the recommendations in one go. Okay, it's quite lengthy, but you'd rather it was read out for the tape, I think. So committee notes the progress to date on the construction works for Scala Arts Centre and the establishment of a new charitable incorporated organisation as operator. Notes the government's confirmation of cultural funding allocation to support the development of additional assets for Scala Arts Centre, namely the Corn Exchange, co-working space in number 6 Angel Place, and outdoor infrastructure in Angel Place. In respect of these additional Scala assets, authorises the development of design work up to and including REBA Stage 4 for the Corn Exchange, number 6 Angel Place, and outdoor infrastructure in Angel Place in accordance with the cultural funding grant requirements. Subject to the satisfactory conclusion of design and all other pre-construction activities, delegates authority to the Managing Director and Corporate Director, Economic Development, Planning and Governance, in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chairs of this committee, to use the cultural funding allocation to commission the requisite works packages for these additional Scala assets. approves the revised approach to a food and beverage operating model for Scala and Corn Exchange as set out in section 3 of this report, and notes that the new Scala charity will ultimately determine its preferred operating model and any contracts required. Adam?
Yes, I'd having heard those read out, I'm concerned about recommendation 3, preparing Rebus up to Rebus stage 4 for the outdoor infrastructure in Angel Place. It doesn't build in any consultation with stakeholders, which I think is essential.
I'm just looking at you, Sean. That's intended to be part of the programme, is it? Hello?
Yes, sorry. Sorry, Chair. Yeah. I was just thinking about whether to add it to 1.3 or 1.4. Yes. In accordance with, so at the end of 1.3, in respect to the additional assets, Rebus Stage 4, outdoor infrastructure in Angel Place, in accordance with the cultural funding grant requirements and appropriate consultation. Because 1.4 is subject to consultation with chair and vice chairs in any event. Is that great?
So I'm happy with that amendment to 1.3.
And appropriate consultation. Great, thank you.
So just to be clear for the tape, we're adding plus appropriate consultation to recommendation 1.3. Okay, so all those in favour of the recommendations on the paper with that amendment? Thank you, that's unanimous. And we move on with the Scala, step further forward. Final agenda item is procurement strategy.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So back in March, this committee approved the procurement code, which sets out the actual sort of the rules about how a council should go about its procurement activity. What we've got in Appendix 1 is a procurement strategy. So that's more about the aspirations and the guiding principles that should adopt whilst going through that process. You know, everything that a council buys, you know, if it's over levels, it should be quotes and complies with all legislation. But there are things within it which are open to discretion. And what we've built into the procurement strategy there is about that focus on the real living wage and about sustainability going forwards. So there's a lot of detail in there. It's very sort of standard what you would see in a procurement strategy, except for those two elements which are, I won't say unique for Worcester, but they are specific things that, you know, the committee and councillors have requested that goes in there. And there's an action plan, which is what the procurement team will be looking to sort of roll out across the council going forwards. It's all about protecting the public purse, and making sure it's value for money. So it's not always about the cheapest, it's not always about the most expensive, it's about getting that balance right for that particular activity that we are procuring and that specification that's needed at that point in time. So happy to answer, well, try to, any questions that anybody has. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I've got Hannah first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Our suppliers have a direct impact on our Scope 3 emissions as a City Council. So I was wondering if we can put pressure on suppliers to measure their carbon footprint so we have really accurate data. Thank you.
I think it's something that we can look at depending on the scale and the amount of business that we are doing with that company at that point in time, but I don't see it as a problem as to requesting it depending on the nature of whatever's going on at that time. So all this is about, we've got the environmental sustainability strategy that's there, so everything that procurement does should be in relation to the city plan and all of those other activities and strategies that the council has agreed upon as good practice. So as long as it's compliant with that, then we'll go ahead with it.
Any other questions? Yeah, Pat?
Really a question so much as a couple of comments, really. I'm pleased to see that we're going to engage more with smaller and medium-sized enterprises, because we haven't done that perhaps as much as we might have so far. So it'd be great that we have this statement of intent here, that we'll be doing something about it. And the other thing is, the partnership work that the council has done over a long period of years, really, has sometimes... We don't get enough information from partners necessarily. We don't pin them to the pin them down and make them tell us exactly where we are. I do think we need a much clearer way of dealing with partners than we've often had. I mean, I can remember a time when everything was so fuzzy, you just didn't know what partners were doing at all. And I'd really like to be sure that we do know what they're doing and that they are working with us in accordance with our policy requirements and with a range of requirements that we've stated.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, procurement is just the first part of the process of building that relationship up with that supplier, whoever we are dealing with. And then ongoing, it's about contract management, and it's about really understanding the KPIs or the social value that they said that they were going to deliver in that contract. And it's all about scale. So the closer, or perhaps the bigger the arrangement is, you've got Freedom Leisure, that's a really good contract there. There's monthly meetings, a lot of KPIs that are being analysed all of the time. So it's about building on those relationships and making sure that the city's got the capacity to manage that contract, making sure that, both sides are delivering what they should be delivering. So absolutely take on board your comments.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the code as written, but I think building on what Hannah was talking about, the areas where we are, when we're letting contracts, making sure that people are paying the real living wage, I think is an excellent example of where we can use our soft power of procurement to improve the situation for everybody. It would be good to look at in future similar arrangements on, after getting our very welcome briefing note about how our electricity supplies only purchase REGO certificates from properly renewable sources, that we could take that to the next step of our suppliers also purchasing renewable energy again from wind and solar suppliers, and similar on fair tax arrangements as well, because I think we passed a motion on fair tax, making sure that any, especially large companies we are dealing with, are paying their fair share of tax in the UK as well. So any opportunities we can use to use our procurement to build on those areas would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the principle, and again, it just comes back to the scale. If you're only doing just, a contract for £1,500 or something like that, you wouldn't do that. But if it's an ongoing partnership, then absolutely, there's a little bit more leverage that we have to place. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I really welcome this. I mean, it's the first time that Worcester City Council has actually had a procurement strategy. And I think, absolutely welcome a new ethical, social value, collaborative approach to procurement by the City Council, and actually how we spend taxpayers' money within Worcester, and the power and the benefits that can come and that can follow from that. There are lots of really good things in it, and I'm really pleased to see them there. Also to note that I think the steer from government that there is particular support coming soon with regard to insourcing and in-house provision of services, and also the ability to kind of favour local businesses and our local economy, which makes how we spend our money even more powerful to the benefit of local people. So recommendation that we recommend, this committee recommends to Council the adoption of the procurement strategy as set out in Appendix 1. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. I think that is, not aware of any other business. Official closure of the meeting. Thank you for your time and your support.